Welcome back everybody to Gleave Makes. My name is Will and today I'm going to be showing you Dragonfly's Headlights and Horns Part 1, where we're going to be primarily setting up the headlight control and wiring for my 7¼ inch gauge electric locomotive. Let's jump straight into the video. So starting out here with a package from 4QD, which is super exciting, as well as the delivery of 2 snail horns which will come into play later on. The order from 4QD just contains a horn relay board and a couple of other extra bits and pieces that I needed for this project. And you can see that the horn relay board, which is the 12-volt version, has 3 relays and then 4 terminals, each with obviously 2 connection points. So there's basically a terminal per relay, plus 1 for power in, and then a little grey power, control power socket on the other side of the HRB. So the first thing I'm doing here is labelling up each relay just so I can keep track of which one is which, and that will help me out obviously later when I'm wiring everything up. And we have 2 horn relays because we have one high and one low, and as I described in the previous video, obviously want to have a high and low horn. I then designed in CAD a little bracket that I can use to obviously mount the HRB inside the loco, which obviously I think is really important rather than screwing the HRB directly to the body. It also makes it easier to take it out, wire it up, do any maintenance on it later on. What you'll see is that the bracket I designed basically has a hole for each 4 corner of the horn relay board, and then it also has 2 little holes there to mount some countersunk screws to the body of the loco. All of the 4QD stuff comes with really in detail instructions on how to wire everything up. That's the 24-volt version, but the wiring's the same. And also it notes that for inductive type horns, which are most car horns, we need catching diodes to help prevent voltage spikes. Now, rather than actually mounting these diodes into the terminals, I thought the easiest and the cleanest way to do it would be to actually solder them to the little solder points underneath the terminals on the horn relay board. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm bending the legs of the diodes here, and then I will be basically soldering them in place after the fact. I think this is a much simpler way of doing things because I'm not having to balance obviously wiring in the cables for the horns and that sort of thing, also having to then balance the position of the diodes as well. Now the wiring, the soldering points looks a bit random, but I assure you that is correct. I definitely need some new snippers at some point soon because these are absolutely rubbish. And those are actually the ones that came with one of my original 3D printers, so I definitely need to buy a nice new pair of those. Super clean, super straightforward, that's all in place, and according to the instructions that should be fine. The next thing I'm doing is getting the hardware that came with the horn relay board, and I'm obviously screwing those together. Now the horn relay board comes with these nice little standoff things that have little clips, and that allows you basically to quick release the horn relay board. So rather than having to screw it in place and unscrew it every time you want to take it out, replace it, troubleshoot it, you can literally compress these little clips and the whole horn relay board comes straight off, which is obviously really straightforward. And you can see as I pop this in place, kind of satisfying click, they all click into place, and then that is held in really nice and securely. Coming to the inside of the loco now this is just obviously just next to the control board. Now don't judge me, I didn't do pilot holes, I didn't mark out where this is going to be mounted, I just wanted to get this in place. You'll see in a second it is super wonky, but it doesn't matter. It fits in place, it works, it's fine. So, we're not going to be super crazy about the position of where this is going to be. I decided to mount it with the terminals facing out. I think that's going to be the easiest way for me to be able to access it for wiring, because the other side is simply just a control cable. We don't need to be taking that, on and off all the time. This is the control cable, and I had to actually wire this in because the previous person removed these cables, but again, I assure you it all works, you'll see in a little bit. And then it's time to do a bit of satisfying cable management to help keep things nice and neat. Now at this stage, all the wires that you can see in place are not going to change, so I'm just chucking some zip ties on there just to create like a simple wiring loom just to hold everything in place, not having to undo this again. I shouldn't need to anyway, it should all just stay in place there. So I think that looks much better than it did before. Keeping things nice and neat is obviously really important, especially when you've got moving parts inside. The next thing to consider is the power terminals for the battery. Now you can see I'm taking a fuse out of there, and the fuse is actually in place obviously to protect various bits of the circuitry, especially the control board. But this Wiring is actually more complicated without the horn relay board than it was, than it will be with it, and you'll see that in a minute. So I've got 3 cables coming from power. One was for the headlight, one was for the original horn, and then obviously one goes to the 4QD DN05, which obviously we don't need anymore. So I can completely remove that. The new wiring simply only needs 2 power cables coming from the positive terminal on the battery. One goes obviously to the control board as normal, so the DN05, so that controls obviously the motors, and the other one goes straight to the horn relay board, which is obviously really nice. So I'm actually here reusing the fused power cable. Now the fuse is not required, but obviously highly recommended to help prevent any voltage spikes or anything damaging your controller. So obviously the fuse will blow before anything else does. Then I'm just getting a new negative terminal, same wire gauge as the other one, and obviously we need to get that screwed in there so that we can obviously power the horn relay board. So only 2 cables go into it to power both horns and the headlight, and then obviously all the other cables go out of it to the horns and then the headlight. You can see the wiring here for the headlight coming to that terminal that I've glued in place there very awkwardly, and then you can see I'm running the cable, that the original cable is just slightly too short, which is really annoying. That is unfortunate, but it's fine, we'll have to deal with it. I've spliced in a bit of an extension on those cables there, and I've given myself plenty of extra just to allow me to do a bit of cable management, but obviously not to restrict myself too much, because that would be really annoying. I've stripped the ends of those cables, and I'm just wiring in the light to begin with. I want to make sure the light works, and then we can obviously move on to the horns in part 2, which you'll see in a short amount of time. Now, I know I could have put I could have crimped the end of that cable, or I could have soldered it, but I just decided the quickest way would just be to literally twist it and then chuck it in place. Now you can see everything is wired up. We've now got the new negative terminal, which obviously I changed some of the wiring of that to keep it fairly straightforward, and then we've got the positive, just the 2 cables there going to the positive terminal, keeping things super straightforward. This all goes up to the headlight, which is obviously what we're going to be testing first, and I think it's time to actually have a test. So I've chucked the battery in there. You can see my 3D printed adapter, which I made, which obviously allows me to put that specific battery into the Loco. I've wired those 2 in, everything's switched off, so there's actually a key start you would have seen that I've got in place, so everything's switched off at the moment just to protect everything. Time to close the bonnet, and it's time for the first test of the headlight control. So you can see the switch there, and you can just about see with the lights on that the headlight is working and controlled by the hand controller, which is one of the main goals that I wanted. Here's a test in the dark, and you can see how bright that headlight is, so I'm really pleased with how this has gone. Stay tuned for part 2. In part 2 we're going to be wiring up, mounting the horns in place, which is again another really exciting aspect of this project. This is something I wanted to do since I got the Loco. So stay tuned, get subscribed, turn on those notifications, and if you like the video, hit the like button and leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 2.